Discover the amazing power of patience. Transform your life with touching stories in just 7 days. Sarah poured steaming cups of coffee into chipped mugs, the familiar routine comforting yet burdensome. The local diner buzzed with the chatter and laughter of former classmates who now thrived in their corporate towers, blissfully unaware of the life she juggled as a waitress and a single mother. Surrounded by the smell of bacon and syrup, her heart sank a little more with each cheerful conversation that passed her by, a stark reminder of what she had sacrificed to provide for her son, Jake, who dreamed of touching the stars. Rushing through the breakfast crowd felt like sprinting towards a finish line that never appeared. After the last customer had finished their pancake, Sarah dashed to the grocery store, where the aisles seemed to suffocate her with the weight of expectation. She had to keep up the facade, to hold everything together, while the echoes of derisive laughter pierced her thoughts, lingering like a bitter aftertaste. She found herself questioning, was her life defined by her struggles, or did she have the power to change the narrative? Then, one rainy afternoon, an unexpected discovery in her late grandmother's attic punctured her dreary routine. Dust motes danced in the sunlight as she flipped through the pages of an old journal, revealing stories of resilience and unyielding spirit. Her grandmother had triumphed over adversity, transforming heartache into artistry with words. The stories ignited something dormant within Sarah, a flicker of hope that whispered, "You can share your own journey, too." Yet, with the ember of inspiration stirring inside her, self-doubt loomed. Could she ever measure up to her grandmother's legacy? That gnawing uncertainty clung to her as she methodically slid syrup-laden plates across the counter to patrons who flashed memories of their past together. They belittled her as their laughter rang like distant bells, each mocking smile another thud in her chest. Sarah contemplated how easily they had glossed over their own beginnings, choosing instead to shun her working-class reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Later, as fate would have it, she stumbled upon Mr. Thompson, a retired English professor with an eye that sparkled behind thick glasses. Something about his gruff demeanor softened when he spoke of literature with lingering fondness. Tentatively, she approached him with her grandmother's journal, mouth dry and palms clammy. To her surprise, he agreed to guide her. Days turned into weeks, as their sessions flourished with tortured words pouring from her, a stream of pain and perseverance, cloaked by fear of ridicule. Still, whispers from her classmates haunted her relentless pursuit, mocking her attempts as if they were laughable aspirations. Buttons of anxiety lined her chest as she recalled the local writing competition. The peeps of readiness turned into a tempest of panic. Her past echoed through the halls of her mind, more potent than reality. The final hour approached with every keystroke reverberating a new rhythm, her heart racing as she wrestled with acceptance. Submitting her stories meant exposing herself to those who once left her feeling invisible. She teetered on the edge of revelation, craving approval yet paralyzed by dread. In the distance at the annual picnic where laughter erupted like fireworks, she stood with Jake, remnants of confidence battling a swell of doubt. Fear grabbed her throat tight as the announcer's voice danced in her ears. Would her stories resonate, or would they be cast aside like the diner's uneaten scraps? She wrestled with that bitter truth, the consolation she sought dangling before her like a mirage. Would she finally claim her narrative, or would she remain a shadow, unseen and unheard? The weight of submission hung over Sarah like a dark cloud, heavy with dread and uncertainty. She stood at the edge of the picnic field, a rumble of excitement rippling through the crowd as the announcer prepared to reveal the writing competition winners. Jake was at her side, innocent and brimming with pride for a mother whose achievements he couldn't fathom yet. The fabric of her reality felt threadbare, fraying at the edges, the laughter of her classmates a stark juxtaposition to the tempest swirling within her. "You can't worry about what they think," she whispered to herself. her fingers trembling against the smooth surface of the papers she had just submitted. "You did this for yourself." The affirmation echoed, but self-doubt answered back. Each punctuation mark on the page, a reminder of moments lost, missteps, and abandoned dreams that seemed to mock her hopes. Mr. Thompson had nurtured her writing, encouraged her to uncover the depths of her experiences, to weave them into something greater. But today, she felt like a marionette, strings pulled taut, anticipating the fall. Rearranging strands of narrative into something coherent was a task that had both ignited her spirit and threatened to consume her. Would her grandmother's spirit watch in pride or disdain as she faced this pivotal moment? "Mom, are you okay?" Jake's voice sliced through her fragmented thoughts, the innocence in his inquiry somehow grounding her. His unwavering belief in her capability, his unwavering belief in anything reminded her of the journey that had brought her here. Every word she had written stemmed not from the approval of her peers, but from the life they had shared, laden with resilience that bore stories untold. As the judges' names were announced, her heart pounded noisily. It felt dissonant against the festivity around her. The sharpened edges of her insecurities threatened to draw blood every time she dipped into the well of her memories. Perhaps she would hear her name, or perhaps she would simply dissolve into vapor created by the sentimentality surrounding her. The thought crushed her. When her name pierced the air, echoed in a way that felt unreal, Sarah could hardly breathe. It reverberated and crackled a sound that carried her hopes, pain, and struggle into the fray. Moments seemed to stretch into eternity as she approached the stage, feeling every halting glance and judgment from the crowd. With every step, her heart thudded, a visceral reminder that she was more than a waitress, more than a choice forced upon her by circumstance. This was her moment, her time to reclaim her narrative. Yet as she took the microphone, words caught in her throat. A wave of fear rushed through her. What if she faltered? What if her story was met with silence? A confirmation of everything she feared. Looking out at the faces familiar yet foreign, Sarah found herself grappling with the instinct to shrink back. But in that moment, fueled by the innocence of Jake's smile and the memory of her grandmother's words, she felt herself ignite. She wasn't just sharing stories. She was presenting a piece of her soul. "People often forget," she began, her voice trembling yet fierce, "that every narrative is an opportunity for understanding, for connection. I stand before you, not as a shadow, but as a beacon of every struggle that shaped me." The attention of the crowd shifted, and for the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She realized that vulnerability could become her strength. As she finished reading, her heart soared against the weight of uncertainty. She sensed the shift. The energy had changed. Perhaps they were starting to see her, truly see her, not as a character of mockery, but as an embodiment of resilience. But just as hope burgeoned within her, she caught a glimpse of judgment veering from the corner of the crowd. Someone familiar, someone from her past, a face that promised rebuke. Would the weight of their disdain drag her back into the depths she so desperately wished to escape? As applause erupted around her, deeper questions clawed at her resolve. Would this moment of triumph grant true liberation? Or would she simply stand at the precipice of acceptance without ever stepping forward? The applause washed over Sarah like a tide, exhilarating yet threatening to pull her under. She stepped off the stage, heart racing, her pulse drumming out a wild rhythm of triumph and trepidation. The taste of victory lingered on her tongue, bittersweet, as the memory of that judgmental gaze haunted her thoughts. How could anyone from her past show up now, when she was finally beginning to reclaim her voice? Jake bounced over, his face glowing with pride. "Mom, you were amazing. Everyone loved it." "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, forcing a smile while her mind spun. The confrontation that loomed in her periphery overshadowed the accolades. She spotted the figure again, the tall silhouette, unmistakable, arms crossed and lips tight. It was Rachel, a childhood nemesis who seemed to relish in mocking her insecurities. The history between them had always felt like a relentless loop, one she had tried to break free from but now found herself tethered to again. With each stride Rachel took toward her, Sarah felt a flood of vulnerability crash down. What would she say? What might Rachel accuse her of now, after daring to lay her truth bare before others? The possibility threatened to dim the light of the evening. "Mom?" Jake's voice broke her trance. "Are you all right?" Sarah knelt down, meeting his gaze. "Yes, honey. Just a lot to process." "Can I tell you what I thought about the story?" he asked, his enthusiasm undeterred. Forcing herself to focus, she nodded. "Of course. It was like you showed everyone how strong you are. Like a superhero. And I liked that you made the ending happy." Jake mirrored her own earlier determination. His innocent take forced a sliver of clarity back into her chaotic thoughts. She opened her mouth to respond but felt the vibration of Rachel's approach. "Congratulations, Sarah." Rachel's voice sliced through the air, smooth and condescending. "I'm surprised you could even read the words without breaking down." The barb nestled deep, but Sarah refused to let it fester. This was the moment to choose resilience over retreat. She spent far too long in submission to the whispers of self-doubt. "Thank you, Rachel. I realize not everyone has a story they feel confident enough to share," Sarah said, locking eyes with her. Felt bold, electrifying. Jake stood by her side, a young bastion of belief, and for the first time, she understood the power of that unwavering faith. Beneath Rachel's exterior lay nothing but insecurity, a rush of stale air that couldn't touch the depth of what Sarah had finally revealed about herself. "You've always preferred pointing fingers to support, haven't you?" Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." "Truth?" Rachel scoffed, but her bravado wavered. "What truth? That you're just a distraction trying to masquerade as a writer?" With each word, Rachel tipped into the bitter well of her past. Yet Sarah felt a withdrawal from that gravity. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to scream. Instead, she inhaled deeply, feeling the rush of liberation replace the weight of Rachel's words. "Every word I wrote comes from something real, Rachel. It's painful to admit that I let myself be held back, but it's also freeing." This confession, an act of bravery in itself, caused a ripple effect in her being. Each acknowledgement peeled away layers of self-imposed restraint, revealing the vibrant, determined soul that she had always sought. Rachel blinked, caught off guard, and for a split second, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. But then her facade hardened again, and with a dismissive flip of her hair, she turned away. In that moment, Sarah felt an enlightening shift within. She had faced the shadows of her past and emerged unscathed. Perhaps triumph wasn't solely about winning or even applause, but about the narratives we chose to embrace. "Mom, you were awesome." Jake beamed with unfiltered joy, oblivious to the underlying tension. "Yes, wasn't I?" she replied, a daring exhilaration coursing through her as she pulled her son into a warm embrace. In the aftermath of that confrontation stood something new in awareness that she was finally ready to explore all the stories bubbling just beneath the surface. As Jake tugged her hand, leading her to the rest of the crowd, Sarah felt a drive surge within her. The triumph felt temporary but transformative. Yet with Rachel retreating, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the confrontation hadn't reached its conclusion. What further truths remained unspoken, waiting for their moment to unravel? Would Rachel's impact echo into her future? Or would Sarah finally sever the ties that had long limited her potential? The night buzzed, and she knew the answers lay ahead, distant yet tantalizing. Sarah walked through the crowd, her heart still racing from the exchange with Rachel. The weight of her past pressed lightly now, like a shadow she could see but not touch. Jake's laughter echoed around her, unfettered joy radiating from him. She hoped to hold onto that joy, to let it pull her further away from the anxious memories. But as she moved deeper into the throng of people, a new complication began to crystallize in her mind. What did her future hold? With every compliment she received, a small voice questioned her sincerity, replaying Rachel's taunts, twisting her confidence. She had shared a part of herself on stage, but would it always remain a part of her past? "Mom, do you want to talk to any of your friends?" Jake chirped, pointing to a group, laughter spilling like music from their circle. Sarah hesitated, suddenly weary. The idea of facing more familiar faces felt daunting. She needed to nurture this newfound boldness, but how could she do that without confronting her insecurities head-on? She smiled at Jake, brushing the doubts aside. "Let us go cheer for them." As they approached, she sensed the warmth of camaraderie, friends mingling, sharing ideas, celebrating creativity. Sarah felt her chest swell with a mix of pride and trepidation. Perhaps, like Jake, she could learn to see herself as a strong contributor in this community. "Sarah, you were incredible," a friend called, breaking through her anxious thoughts. "We need to catch up more often." The sincerity of those words lit warmth within her, a flicker of validation untainted by Rachel's shadow. She found herself sharing snippets of her story, her writing process, each comment a stitch binding her to the collective aspirations around her, anchoring her, imparting strength. Yet amidst the applause of her inner circle, an eddy of anxiety surfaced. Rachel's presence lurked in the background of her mind, a reminder of the dichotomy between praise and critique. Deep down, there lurked a question. Was her writing truly worthy, or would she always remain an imposter? "Hey, can we show them what we've been working on?" Jake's innocent eagerness disrupted her spiral. "I want them to hear my story." Sarah's heart swelled with maternal pride, but she also felt a pang of reluctance. Did she possess enough courage to share this intimate part of herself, now that her platform felt both exhilarating and terrifying? "Of course," she replied, adopting the same brave spirit she'd shown on stage. It became clear her focus had to sharpen onto the empowerment that could sprout from vulnerability. She positioned herself beside Jake, beaming into the collective gaze of curious minds. As he began to articulate his thoughts, showcasing his own budding creativity, she felt tethered anew, the fear momentarily eclipsed by the shared experience. She could see the impact of their words, her obstacles giving way to the warmth of honest exchanges. This new approach recalibrated her understanding of obstacles. Instead of crumbling under criticism, she could pave avenues for dialogue, harnessing her emotions and refashioning resentment into resilience. It offered a canvas upon which to explore not just her literary aspirations but her humanity. The room buzzed with admiration, and Jake's words sparked ideas, inspiring fellow writers in the crowd. As they engaged in discussions, Sarah felt her resolve harden. She wasn't alone in her story, nor did she need to navigate it in silence. Collaboration cultivated a fertile ground for growth, and she found herself questioning how best to navigate the space she occupied. Yet just as she felt the stirrings of possibility, Rachel reemerged in her thoughts, figures from her past weaving through her mind. The confrontation had left set pieces of unresolved history that called for reckoning. She understood she wouldn't find true freedom without addressing those shadows more deeply. With a lingering discomfort that crescendoed urgently, Sarah resolved to do more than resist. "Jake," she said softly, "I think it's time I reached out to some people from my past. It's time I faced them and perhaps even myself." This declaration hung heavy in the air as she processed the ramifications of such a decision. Would she uncover strength or vulnerability? Would old resentments resurface? Or would her choices forge an unbreakable bond to the writer she was intended to be? Ultimately, this meant dissecting the fractured pieces Rachel embodied, twisting them into a dialogue that would spur empowerment. The desire to emerge unshackled clung around her, whispering that the journey must continue beyond the applause and embrace. With each flutter of her heart, Sarah sensed the next chapter of her narrative coalescing on the horizon, emerging from the depths, and longing for resolution. As they stepped further into the evening, she couldn't shake the sensation that an unavoidable confrontation awaited, waiting just beyond her reach. What truths lay alongside the specters of her past, and how would they shape her future as she walked from this moment? As they stepped back into the world outside, Sarah felt the crispness of evening air awaken her senses. It was a transitional moment, a night where reflections collided with anticipations, and she clutched onto Jake's hand, grounding herself amidst swirling thoughts. The lingering weight of her previous decision pressed against her like the gentle tug of the sea pulling at the shore, urging her to dive deeper. "Mom, are we gonna find a place to eat?" Jake asked, his eyes sparkling with youthful curiosity. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, forcing her lips into a tentative smile. Yet, beneath that semblance of calm, her mind raced. How could she prepare herself for the conversations ahead? For so long, she had shied away from the people who had shaped her narrative, each encounter like another brick added to the wall that comprised her insecurities. Imagining the potential reactions sparked both excitement and dread. Would Rachel even respond? Or had the years of silence turned their relationship irreparably cold? The notion of confrontation loomed like a tempest on the horizon, stirring her heart into a frenzy. As they made their way to a cozy diner, brightly lit and bustling with the sounds of laughter and clattering dishes, Sarah felt compelled to own her path. She gripped the menu, but her thoughts turned less toward food and more toward the authenticity of her voice, a singular thread in the fabric of her life. Each time she hesitated, it felt as if she was digging her heels into the ground, unwilling to step forward. "Jake," she said after a few moments, her voice barely above a whisper, "what if I told you that talking to someone from my past scares me?" He looked up, thoughtful. "But you're brave, Mom. You talked in front of everyone. Remember?" His innocence was a balm yet a challenge, pushing against the confines of her comfort zone. "Bravery is standing up when you're scared," she said, tasting the words. "But it also means acknowledging that fear and pushing through it, doesn't it?" A knowing expression crossed Jake's face, and he nodded. It was the kind of understanding that reminded her of how perceptions could shift, how children could view a situation with an open heart unencumbered by years of doubt. Perhaps the light Jake held was the same she needed to rekindle within herself. That evening, she began preparing to reach out, setting up her laptop in the glow of their living room. The carousal of memories ignited her fingers poised above the keys. She opened a blank email, breathing in deeply, inviting the stillness around her to weave through the chaos in her mind. What would she say to Rachel? How could she articulate the tangled threads of disappointment and growth without sounding bitter? The spaciousness of the digital page offered no immediate answers, yet it was a harbinger of change. Her heart raced with each thought that took shape, a chaotic jumble of past betrayals and present aspirations. "Hi Rachel," she typed. The words felt weighted, as if each letter carried her burden, along with the hope for reconciliation. She couldn't help but think of all the unresolved feelings, the situations left tangled in messy silence. But now, a bridge needed to be built if she wanted to move forward. She needed to take a step back. After tapping away her thoughts, Sarah hesitated, hovering over the send button like a tightrope walker straddling uncertainty. This wasn't merely an email. It was a testament to her evolution, one that demanded a leap of faith. "Send," she whispered, suddenly feeling a rush of adrenaline powering through her. It felt as though her past and future converged in a singularity of intention, hovering just out of reach yet tantalizingly close. The act of reaching out became a pivotal moment, a line drawn in the sand. She recognized the significance of this choice, not only for herself but as a lesson for Jake. It was about taking ownership of her own narrative, shaping it on her own terms. "Mom, what is happening?" Jake asked, breaking her reverie. "I just took a step towards change," she replied, bewildered by a blend of exhilaration and unresolved trepidation. "Now we wait." With both hope and a knot of anxiety entwined in her stomach, Sarah felt the weight of her decision settle around her like a cloak. What would Rachel's response reveal? Would confrontation yield the clarity she sought? Or would the storm of the past threaten to overwhelm her new resolve? As the evening winds whispered secrets through the trees beyond the window, Sarah knew that the real reckoning was just beginning. What awaited her on the other side of this initial correspondence? Would the truth illuminate the way forward, or would it deepen the shadows of her past? The hours crept by as Sarah sat in the living room, the glow of her laptop illuminating her anxious face. The weight of her decision bore down on her like an anchor, but beneath the surface, a flicker of hope danced in the recesses of her mind. She knew that the message sent to Rachel might alter the course of both her past and future, but she also understood that silence would continue to imprison her. Jake had settled into a game on his tablet, oblivious to the storm brewing in Sarah's thoughts. The gentle sounds of digital explosions and his laughter filled the room, acting as a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. She watched him with a sense of clarity. This was about more than just reconciliation. It was about being an example for her son, teaching him not only the art of resilience but also the courage to confront one's past. Her phone vibrated, startling her from her reverie. It was a notification from her email. Heart pounding, she reached for it, drawing in a sharp breath as she tapped the screen. It wasn't Rachel's reply. Instead, it was a reminder about the public speaking workshop she had signed up for weeks earlier. Her pulse quickened, and she felt the familiar swell of doubt creeping back in. Was she really ready to speak in front of others again? The very thought of sharing her story felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. But if the theme was about courage, didn't it also involve embracing the unfinished chapters of her life? The workshop could serve as a training ground and arena where she could hone her voice, perhaps even touch upon the unresolved threads with Rachel in a different way. Could this offer her the skills and confidence required to confront the chilling silence of years past? She took a moment and reflected on the subject matter of her presentation. Struggling to articulate her thoughts clearly in writing was one thing, but standing before an audience with vulnerability exposed was another level of engagement altogether. Perhaps she could weave together her recent experiences into a narrative facing her fears of both public speaking and personal conflict. Drawing inspiration from Jake's unwavering belief in her bravery, Sarah made the decision to embrace the workshop for all it was worth. She would not only share her experiences but also challenge herself to instigate a dialogue that mirrored her current emotional journey. While waiting for Rachel's reply, she could shift her attention, prepare herself, and transform her uncertainty into an empowering force. She penned a few notes on what she wanted to express. Words twisted and turned on the page, hinting at the intense heartbeat of her life, the quest for identity embraced through vulnerability. The room around her transformed as she immersed herself in this newfound purpose, and the weight lightened, reshaping into a powerful motivation. Sarah's resolve solidified with every stroke of the pen. She could feel her growth unfolding, a convergence of newfound insights pushing her forward. She would speak not just to an audience, but to herself, to the fears that had long held her captive. Then came another vibration. This time it was unmistakable. It was Rachel's name flashing on the screen, a stark reminder that the very confrontation she deconjured was at her fingertips. A rush of emotions surged: fear, anticipation, and the undeniable pull to continue moving forward. With a steadying breath, Sarah opened the email. What had Rachel written? Would it be a door to healing or a reminder of the wounds that had never truly closed? As she read the words on the screen, everything else faded into the background. Who would emerge from this dialogue? Was it the Sarah she had been or the one she hoped to become? The moment was at hand. The time to face the unknown was now. Unbeknownst to her, this would be a pivotal turning point, dictating the terms of her next steps. What would Rachel say, and how would it alter her burgeoning sense of self? The words blurred together on the screen as Sarah struggled to focus on Rachel's email. Familiar phrases danced in her mind: apologies, explanations, the raw recognition of pain. Rachel had poured her heart onto the page, detailing the hurt feelings, the misunderstandings that had broadened the chasm between them. Each line felt like a ripple in Sarah's own tumultuous ocean of emotions. Her breath hitched as she read the ending. Rachel had expressed a desire to meet. The request hung between them like a charged wire, full of potential energy waiting to be unleashed. This was it, an opportunity to reshape her relationship and perhaps provide a template for how to navigate uncomfortable dialogues. What if their meeting birthed not just resolution, but a new beginning, each woman recalibrating her view of the past? The thought crushed her beneath its weight. Did she have the strength to sit face to face with Rachel? To confront the pain that had simmered quietly? But that same flicker of hope ignited again. This was also a chance to create the example she wanted for Jake, the ability to confront issues head-on, to embrace discomfort as a part of growth. Perhaps, if she could muster her courage, this moment could unlock her own transformations. With resolute ambition, She set the email aside. She pulled out her notes for the workshop and flipped to a clean page. If she would soon face Rachel, she must first equip herself with clarity and strength. She was not merely recounting experiences. She was digging deep, forging the tools to express herself amidst the pressure of vulnerability. Under the faint illumination of her laptop, Sarah began to craft her narrative. "What does courage mean?" she penned. "Can it coexist with fear, or does it require the absence of it?" Words flowed from her fingertips, stitched together by an urgency uniquely her own. This wasn't merely about speaking in public. It was about confronting the inner dialogues that had often left her feeling inadequate. The scars left from unresolved conflicts felt closer than ever, almost palpable in the quiet of her home. As she wrote, she imagined her audience the diverse faces, each coming with their unique burdens. She wanted to ignite something within them, to inspire the kind of transformation she craved for herself. Every note of her presentation mirrored her journey, a raw testament to reconciliation, both with Rachel and within herself. Time drifted as she submerged herself in preparation. Finally, after hours, she leaned back and surveyed her work. "This is just the beginning," she thought, a surge of confidence rallying within. What lay ahead would be remarkable, an invitation to grow, to confront her past with gratitude rather than resentment. Just as she prepared to shut her laptop, a new notification pinged. Heart racing, she leaned in and read Rachel's response once more. "I think we should meet in person. How does next week sound?" Her stomach dropped, yet excitement bubbled just beneath the anxiety. That confrontation loomed large. Would she sink or swim when put to the test of honesty? There was an undeniable tension in the prospect, a rawness that beckoned a deeper commitment to her growth. As she considered the imminent meeting, another thought flared. This wasn't just about Rachel. It was about her own reclamation of agency. The time had come to face not only Rachel but the layers of herself she had long neglected. Steeling her resolve, Sarah made a mental note to adjust her workshop speech to include this evolving narrative, to weave the themes of forgiveness and courage into the fabric of her presentation. She was on the brink of something transformative, and with that, the weight could finally lift. What awaited her in that meeting could reshape everything. How would she step into the room and, more importantly, how would she step out? Sarah awoke the next morning feeling the weight of the world settling on her shoulders. The sunlight filtering through her curtains painted patterns on the floor, but its warmth did little to alleviate the chill coursing through her veins. That email from Rachel loomed in her mind, a tangible reminder of the emotional reckoning awaiting her. She rubbed her eyes and began to question her next steps. Was she ready to confront the ghosts of the past? The fear of vulnerability nudged at her incessantly, but there was also a rising determination clawing its way to the surface. This was more than just a meeting. It was the crucible where she would temper her own resolve. In preparation, she grabbed her notebook and jotted down key points from her evolving workshop speech. Each line she wrote blended her experiences with the lessons she was beginning to uncover. Courage was no longer an abstract concept. It was a tangible force she needed to harness. With each word, she was learning that her personal growth was intrinsically tied to vulnerability and reconciliation, not only with Rachel but with herself. As the days ticked by, Sarah immersed herself in her crafting narrative, pouring thought onto the page with increasing fervor. Each paragraph illuminated the cleft within, revealing cracks that were previously hidden. It was through examining these broken places that she discovered hidden competencies and unexpected strengths. She relished those moments of insight, even as she grappled with the self-doubt entwined in their exploration. Yet, beyond her written words, the specter of the upcoming meeting gnawed at her. She envisioned the setting, the cafe filled with the ambient sounds of conversation, the aroma of coffee mingling with anxiety. She knew the environment held potential to soothe or to heighten her nerves. Would she articulate her thoughts clearly? Would the emotions swell and overwhelm her? As she prepared, she turned to the people in her life for counsel, seeking wisdom from friends who had walked similar paths. Their encouragement felt like lifelines. Yet each time she spoke about Rachel, an unsettling doubt seized her. What if confronting her past only deepened the wounds? One afternoon, while chatting with her best friend, Lisa, Sarah admitted her fears. What if I disappoint her? Or worse, what if I disappoint myself? Lisa leaned in, her eyes sharp with empathy. Sarah, remember this isn't solely about fixing the past. It's about understanding it. You're on a quest for clarity, and that's commendable. Regardless of the outcome, you're taking charge of your own narrative. Those words echoed within her, emboldening her resolve. The night before the meeting, Sarah lay awake, her mind swirling with insecurities and possibilities. In the stillness, her internal voice became a mixture of exhortation and dread. She grappled with what could arise: a flood of unresolved emotions or a calm reflection. But no matter the outcome, she was ready for the journey toward reconciling her perception of self. As morning light warmed the room, she took one final look at her notes. Reassurance washed over her as she affirmed to herself that growth is often wrought with discomfort. Discomfort that cultivates change and bridges the past with the present. On the way to the cafe, the world outside shimmered with the promise of transformation. Sarah's heart raced, charged with a mixture of anticipation and fear, but her mind sharpened with resolve. Stepping into the unknown was the new norm. Growth demanded it. She entered the cafe, scanning the faces around her, searching for Rachel's familiar form. The moment was ripe with potential. Just beyond those entrance doors was an opportunity to redefine both their futures. What awaited her at the table could unravel years of tension or ignite a fire of understanding. How she would navigate this moment would determine not only her relationship with Rachel, but her very sense of self. Would she rise to the occasion or falter under the weight of expectation? The cafe buzzed with a comforting hum, but as Sarah stepped inside, it felt as though the noise muted under the weight of her thoughts. She spotted Rachel, seated in a secluded corner, and her heart quickened. The woman who had once been her confidant now seemed both familiar and foreign, wrapped in layers of memories that surged to the forefront of Sarah's mind. The sight of Rachel ignited a complex whirlwind of emotions: nostalgia, regret, a flickering hope. Compelled to move, Sarah's legs carried her forward, but each step was a battle between dread and determination. Would Rachel see the change in her, or would the past consume her? As she approached the table, she noticed Rachel's tentative smile, a mere shadow of the warmth it once held. It was an acknowledgement of their shared history, but also an unspoken question: were they ready to confront it? Taking a deep breath, Sarah settled into the chair opposite her. "Hi, Sarah," Rachel said softly, her voice a mixture of vulnerability and caution. Sarah nodded, fighting the urge to spiral into a fog of old insecurities. "Thanks for meeting me." Her voice, slightly tremulous, reflected her uncertainty but also her resolve. The coffee arrived, steaming and inviting, yet the atmosphere felt charged, fraught with unexpressed emotions. Sarah realized this moment was not just about reconciliation with Rachel. It was an expedition into her own psyche. Each sip of coffee was like a sip from a well of courage. She needed to immerse herself fully in this journey, a journey that had the potential to alter the very fabric of how she viewed both herself and her relationships. "How have you been?" Rachel inquired, her gaze steady yet cautious. The question hung heavily in the air. Sarah considered the lie of a simple answer versus the revelation that lay buried within her. "I've been working on understanding myself better," she confessed. She hesitated, sensing the weight of every word. Reflections of past misunderstandings danced in her mind. "And that includes facing the things that have held me back, the ghosts of our past." The words struck a chord, and Rachel's expression shifted to one of earnest curiosity. Yet the flicker of fear was undeniable. "That's brave," she stammered. "I wasn't sure if you'd even want to see me after everything that happened." The admission hung between them, a testament to the distance that years of silence had carved into their relationship. For Sarah, responding to that sentiment took on new meaning, a chance to stretch her emotional boundaries. "I think it's important to understand what happened, even if it means revisiting the pain. We can't keep running from it, right?" The hesitation in Rachel's eyes began to soften. "You're right," she admitted, her vulnerability revealing cracks in her own facade. In that moment, Sarah recognized the profound truth. Their shared history was not just a source of pain but a canvas for potential healing. She understood that reclaiming her narrative meant embracing not only the joys but also the scars. As the conversation deepened, Sarah felt a renewed sense of agency washing over her. Each recollection they unpacked transformed into an insight, illuminating facets of her character long buried beneath the rubble of regret and doubt. She began to see strengths she hadn't realized were there: the ability to engage in difficult conversations, the courage to confront discomfort, and a growing resilience that whispered promises of transformation. With every word exchanged, Sarah gathered threads of connection, weaving them into something that felt stronger than before. The unfurling dialogue held the potential to reshape their futures, but she also felt the weight of the decisions looming ahead. Would forgiveness extend to herself as much as it did to Rachel? What if we could rebuild? Rachel's question caught her off guard. A spark ignited within Sarah, a tantalizing mixture of fear and eagerness unfurling inside her. The idea of rebuilding was daunting yet exhilarating, a haunting echo of the possibilities there. Relationship held. Sarah met Rachel's gaze, the challenge crystallizing in that brief exchange. Would she step into the transformative power of vulnerability, or retreat into the comfort of familiar solitude? "I'm willing to try," Sarah replied, the intention firm in her voice. But as they delved deeper into their shared past, one undeniable truth emerged: each revelation carried its own consequences. There was much left unexamined, and the path ahead would force them both to confront aspects of themselves they had long avoided. What else would they uncover about the intricacies of their past, and would they find the strength to face what lay ahead together? As Sarah settled into the reality of her decision, the initial nervousness that had overwhelmed her began to dissolve. A newfound clarity sparked within her, igniting an insatiable desire to understand not only Rachel's perspective but her own. The stakes were high, but she welcomed the challenge. No longer a waitress defined by the mist of former classmates' scorn, she was a woman reclaiming her narrative, fostering the strength to build relationships based on honesty. Rachel's words hung delicately in the air between them, a bridge waiting to be crossed. As memories flowed, Sarah sensed a shift. Vulnerability was replacing the stigmas of shame and judgment once associated with their history. Each story, once a source of pain, became a thread connecting them, weaving a tapestry of experiences that demanded acknowledgement. However, she understood the need to frame her journey not just as a response to their past but as a pivotal part of her identity. How did we let things get so twisted? Rachel's question was laced with sincerity, stirring something deep within Sarah. It propelled her to reflect on her role, facilitating an exploration of the labyrinthine paths their lives had traversed. It began with misunderstandings, assumptions we made about each other. Life grew complicated, and somewhere, we lost sight of each other. Sarah replied thoughtfully, her voice steady. In the pause that followed, the weight of their shared pain dulled to a gentle hum. Something crucial was being unearthed: an honest dialogue without fear of judgment. Sarah was determined to not only express how those years apart had shaped her heart, but also to extend forgiveness to the girl she once was, a girl longing for acceptance amid the echoes of ridicule. "I made choices too," Rachel admitted, her grammar formal, but her tone tinged with vulnerability. "Choices I thought protected us from hurt, but they wound up creating more distance." "It's because we were both afraid," Sarah asserted. "Afraid that, if we spoke honestly about our lives, we might expose parts of ourselves we weren't ready to share." That frankness opened a floodgate in her. It dawned on her that she was confronting not only Rachel but also the deeply entrenched fears that had held her captive, weaving intricate barriers around her. Instead of allowing hurt to divide them further, they were weaving a common thread of understanding. As Rachel nodded, Sarah recognized a glimpse of pride flickering in Rachel's eyes. This recognition extended beyond their past. It transformed into the potential for new growth. "I've been trying to make sense of who I am outside of that shadow," she confessed, "where I felt unworthy. Moving forward requires courage, and I realize now that I need to embrace that challenge." "Maybe we both do," Rachel reciprocated. "I never considered how entwined our journeys were until now." Sarah felt a peaceful resolution beginning to settle within her as they continued sharing their stories, a liberation that felt paradoxically weighty and light. The pull of their shared memories was beginning to dissolve the resentment, offering a pathway towards celebration of growth instead. With each passing moment, they started to forge an understanding that transcended layers of hurt. It commanded respect for their personal truths and recognized the beauty in imperfections. She was no longer merely seeking resolution. Rather, she was sculpting a narrative anchored in resilience and authenticity. Later that afternoon, as they drafted tentative steps toward rebuilding their friendship, Sarah could feel a solid energy reclaiming her heart. She felt galvanized not just by this encounter but by the potential of all the words yet to be articulated. As Sarah left the cafe, the warmth of possibility enveloped her. Once not too long ago, her life felt truncated by the judgments and opinions of others. Now, armed with acute awareness, she was blossoming into a persona strong enough to transform fears into fuel for her ascent. "Hey, how'd it go?" Jake lit up at the sight of her, his innocent excitement, confirming the growth she'd achieved in such a short time. "We had the conversation we needed." She smiled, and within that smile resided a promise she would nurture the courage to turn her past into a guiding light for her future. "Now it's time we celebrate with ice cream." Jake's joyful cheer echoed like a triumphant anthem celebrating victory over fragility. With each step towards the ice cream parlor, she felt the resonance of triumph within her, intricately layered with resilience. This shared moment marked a threshold of her evolution. Each passing stride magnifying the power of patience, the walls of self-doubt began to crumble, exposing the core of her burgeoning identity. As they indulged in their favorite treats, Sarah reflected on the journey that was still ahead, where friendship, creativity, and acceptance would intertwine warmly. No longer haunted by the judgment of the past, she embraced the narrative that had become inherently hers. This wasn't a conclusion, but rather the vibrant tail end of a chapter where achievements coalesced into a bold proclamation of growth. In this newly forged space, Sarah had achieved a solid confidence, demonstrated competence that extended beyond her roles, and stepped into the established position of a writer sharing her truth with authenticity. Now, with a heart unburdened and eyes set on horizons yet to be discovered, Sarah achieved not just emotional reconciliation but a powerful personal resolution. "Let us go write some stories of our own," she said, glancing down at Jake with a wisdom born from experience. He grinned, a shining beacon reflecting her steadfast belief that they could conquer the skies together, turning aspirations into a shared reality. If you relate to Sarah's empowering transformation and want more inspiring stories, you need to subscribe now to our channel. You don't want to miss any exclusive emotional journeys. Leave a like right now to fuel our algorithm and help spread this message of personal achievement. And comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because true fans of overcoming obstacles know the importance of uplifting each other through these stories. Don't wait even one more second to make your support known.